Jeffrey Epstein. Just hearing the name, it brings up a lot, doesn't it? This sort of chilling feeling, these hidden networks, and honestly, the really disturbing idea that maybe some people just operate completely outside the law.
Absolutely. It became instantly synonymous with scandal, with, immense power, and these questions that just keep lingering.
It's a case that really reached into the highest levels of society, touching on, well, everything. Our legal system, our institutions.
And the whole nature of power when it's not held accountable.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we want to do in this deep dive. We're going to try and unpack this really complex, really disturbing Jeffrey Epstein case. The idea is to pull out the most important pieces of information from the sources you've shared, kind of give you a shortcut to getting up to speed.
Right.
We'll focus on how he managed to get away with it all for so long and the difference, the really stark difference between what we actually know versus all the speculation out there.
And what it all means, bigger picture, for power and accountability.
Definitely. And we'll also look closely at his connections, the documented ones, with Donald Trump and the political fallout that, well, it's still echoing today, even now, in Trump's second term.
It's such a critical subject because it really forces us to look at some uncomfortable truths, about how justice works or maybe how it doesn't work and who it works for.
Okay, so let's start with a bit of a refresher. Maybe some folks have followed parts of this, others might be newer to it. Who is Jeffrey Epstein, fundamentally, and what was he accused of?
Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein was, on the surface, a wealthy American financier, but crucially, he was also a convicted sex offender. His money situation was always very opaque.
Right, like where did the billions actually come from?
Exactly. He claimed billions, but the source, still a mystery. Often with these kinds of fortunes, you see shell companies, maybe offshore trusts, sometimes illicit stuff. But with Epstein, we just don't have that concrete proof of the origin.
But his connections weren't a mystery.
Oh, not at all. He had this huge network, politicians, business leaders, celebrities, academics, you name it, powerful people.
And the core accusations, I mean, they're just horrific.
They really are. He was accused of running a massive sex trafficking and abuse operation involving underage girls. The details point to him recruiting and grooming minors, some apparently as young as 14. Often he'd lure them with money, maybe offering jobs like giving massages.
And this wasn't just in one place.
No, it was a whole network operating from his homes, New York, Florida, and his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Little St. James. And, disturbingly, the accusation was also that he used his connections, his powerful friends, to potentially connect them with young women and girls. Maybe for blackmail, maybe just influence.
Which brings us to that 2008 plea deal. For a lot of people, this is where the story just goes off the rails, a critical point.
Absolutely critical. So in 2008, down in Florida, Epstein cuts this deal. He pleads guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor, state charges.
But the sentence was light, to put it mildly.
Incredibly light. 13 months. And not even in a federal prison, but a county jail. And he got work release, meaning he could leave the jail 6 days a week.
Unbelievable.
And here's the kicker. The deal gave immunity to his alleged co-conspirators, whoever they were, and it was kept secret from the victims. That part was actually a violation of federal law.
And it caused outrage later on.
Huge outrage.
Yeah.
It was eventually ruled illegal in how it was handled, yeah. But the damage was done.
And then years later, 2019, the arrest and his death, that just blew everything wide open again.
It really did. July 2019, he's arrested again. This time, federal charges for sex trafficking. He was denied bail, sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York.
And then he was found dead.
August 10th, 2019. Found dead in his cell. The official ruling, suicide by hanging. But the circumstances were immediately seen as suspicious.
How so?
Well, you had guards who reportedly fell asleep on duty, security
Yeah.
cameras that supposedly malfunctioned, and he'd been taken off suicide watch not long before. All these details together.
Especially given who he knew.
Exactly. Given his powerful connections, it just fueled massive speculation. Conspiracy theories took off immediately.
And after his death, the focus shifted partly to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes. His longtime associate, sometimes girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, she was arrested later. In 2021, she was convicted for trafficking minors for Epstein. She's now serving a 20-year sentence.
Did her trial shed light on the bigger network? The clients?
It revealed some really disturbing details about the recruitment and the abuse itself. But, and this is important, it did not publicly name other potential high-profile people involved. No clients were named in court.
So when you boil it all down, what's the real takeaway here? Why does this case still resonate so much, beyond just the awful crimes?
I think the core insight isn't just a rich guy got away with bad things. It's more about the architecture of power, how backroom deals, the silence of elite circles, how all that was basically weaponized to protect him. It turned justice, into a kind of luxury item.
It raises these huge questions.
Huge questions about how wealth and connections can just warp the legal system, about potential blackmail networks, and the secrecy, the fact that so many documents are still sealed. That just feeds this feeling that we don't know the whole story, and it eats away at trust in institutions.
Which leads right into the next big question. How on earth did he evade justice for so long? This wasn't just luck, right?
No, definitely not luck. It was a combination of things enabled by the world he moved in. First, obviously, was the money. Immense wealth. Source, still kind of murky, like we said.
Billions, potentially.
Yeah, he claimed billions. And that money bought the lifestyle. The mansions, the private island, the jet they called the Lolita Express. And that lifestyle attracted the elite connections. People like, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Bill Gates.
And those connections provided cover.
Seems like it. They provided a kind of protection, a perceived legitimacy. People either assumed he must be okay, or maybe they just chose not to look too closely.
In that 2008 plea deal we talked about, that seems like the absolute cornerstone of how he evaded serious consequences for so long. Let's dig into that a bit more.
It was absolutely central. Remember, he was facing federal charges. Trafficking, potentially over 30 underage girls. Serious stuff.
But the deal watered it down.
Massively. The U.S. attorney at the time, Alex Acosta, approved this, unprecedented non-prosecution agreement. It basically kicked the charges down to the state level, soliciting prostitution, allowed that ridiculously lenient jail term with work release, and gave immunity to unnamed co-conspirators.
And kept the victims in the dark.
Which violated federal law, the Crime Victims' Rights Act. It just wasn't a normal deal. It smelled fishy from the start to those who knew about it. And Acosta, of course, later had to resign as Trump's Secretary of Labor when all this came out publicly.
So it clearly wasn't just Epstein operating in a vacuum. There was this whole network around him. Enablers, co-conspirators.
Precisely. Ghislaine Maxwell was obviously key, directly involved in recruiting and grooming girls, according to her conviction. But beyond her, you had house staff, pilots, assistants, people who either turned a blind eye or maybe actively helped facilitate the abuse.
And the victims themselves were often vulnerable.
Very often, yes. They came from backgrounds where they might be less likely to be believed or didn't have the resources to fight back against someone so powerful. And even within elite circles, despite whispers and suspicion, it seems many powerful people just looked away. Maybe out of fear, maybe wanting to stay close to the power, maybe payoffs were involved. It's hard to know the exact motives for everyone.
He didn't just benefit from the system's flaws, he actively used the legal system against people.
Oh, absolutely. He weaponized it.
Yep.
Non-disclosure agreements were standard. He'd threaten lawsuits, use high-powered lawyers to intimidate, offer payoffs to silence victims and critics. A lot of civil cases against him were settled out of court, quietly.
While maintaining this public image.
Exactly. He carefully cultivated this image of a philanthropist, an intellectual, a connector of great minds. It was all part of the facade to keep his access and legitimacy intact.
Okay, this is where it gets really important, I think, to draw a line. What do we actually know for sure versus what's speculation or conspiracy theory? Let's start with the confirmed facts.
Okay, facts. Based on evidence, court records, convictions. We know Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused dozens, likely many more, underage girls. That's fact.
Great.
We know the 2008 plea deal was extraordinarily lenient and handled in a way that was later found to be illegal regarding victims' rights. Fact.
Okay.
We know he had extensive connections to many, many high-profile people. That's documented. Photos, flight logs, testimony.
Fact.
And Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking minors for Epstein. Fact. Though, again, her trial didn't publicly name the clients or other potential participants.
Okay, so those are the solid ground facts.
Yeah.
Now let's wade into the murkier waters. The speculation, the conspiracy theories that are just constantly buzzing around this case, what are the big ones?
Oh, there are quite a few. One persistent theory is that Epstein wasn't just a sex offender, but he was running some kind of blackmail operation, possibly for an intelligence agency. You hear Mossad, sometimes the CIA mentioned.
Okay, what else?
The biggest one, probably, is Epstein didn't kill himself. The theory that he was murdered in jail to stop him from talking, to protect powerful people.
And the idea that others were directly involved in the abuse.
Yes, widespread speculation that many powerful figures weren't just friends but were actively involved in the sexual abuse, and that there's been a massive cover-up. Names like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew come up frequently as people who visited his properties and may have participated.
And the blackmail angle ties into surveillance.
Right. There were reports, or at least allegations, of surveillance equipment being found in his homes, leading to theories he was secretly recording everything to use as leverage. Blackmail material.
Now, here's the tricky part. Some of these theories, given everything we know about the cover-ups and the weird circumstances, they don't sound completely crazy. What's the important nuance here?
That's the really corrosive part of this whole thing. The actual documented failures of the system, the plea deal, the secrecy, the suspicious death, they're so bad that they create this fertile ground for conspiracy theories. It makes it hard to dismiss everything out of hand.
So the lack of transparency is the fuel.
Exactly. The lack of transparency is absolutely the fuel. While some theories might seem plausible in that context, many specific claims, especially about who was involved beyond Maxwell, remain unproven. They're circumstantial, based on association, not hard evidence presented in court. But until there's more transparency, those gaps will just keep being filled with speculation.
And that lack of transparency points directly to the big questions that are still hanging out there. What are the key things we just don't have answers to?
Well, first, like we keep saying, how did he really make his money? Was the finance stuff legitimate, or was it a front? So don't definitively know.
Second,
That 2008 plea deal. Why did it happen the way it did? Who really pushed for it behind the scenes? Who benefited most? And why on earth were the victims shut out?
okay, third,
The connections. Why were so many powerful people so close to him for so long? Was it just innocent networking? Was it willful ignorance? Or was there actual complicity for some? We don't know the full picture.
fourth, his death.
Yeah, what really happened in that jail cell? Guards asleep, cameras broken, taken off suicide watch. It still smells funny to a lot of people. Was it gross incompetence or something more sinister?
And finally, the clients.
Right. If Ghislaine Maxwell was trafficking girls to people, as she was convicted of doing, who were they? Why weren't they named or prosecuted, at least based on the evidence presented in her trial? That remains a huge, glaring question.
This case has really permeated our culture, hasn't it? It's become this symbol much bigger than just Epstein himself.
Absolutely. It's become a potent symbol for elite impunity. This idea that the rich and powerful play by completely different rules and often get away with it.
And a symbol of a broken justice system.
Definitely. A system where even if you are caught, wealth and connections can somehow buy you leniency, or at least delay accountability for decades. And it also symbolizes hidden truths, this pervasive feeling that there's more going on behind the scenes, that powerful forces are concealing information.
Which explains that meme.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
Yeah.
It became this instant cultural shorthand. It wasn't necessarily a literal claim for everyone using it, but more an expression of deep cynicism about official stories, about institutional cover-ups. It tapped into a real vein of distrust.
Okay, let's pivot now to focus on one specific connection that's gotten, understandably, a ton of scrutiny. Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. What do we actually know about their relationship?
Well, they definitely knew each other socially for quite a long time, going back to the 1980s into the early 2000s, mostly in that Palm Beach, Florida scene.
Both members of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, both were members of Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private club there. They moved in the same kind of elite social circles. And there's that infamous quote from Trump himself back in 2002 to New York Magazine.
Remind us of that one.
He said, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He went on. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side.
Wow. That quote really lands differently now, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Very chilling in retrospect.
And there's photographic evidence of them together, other signs of association?
Yep, there are photos of them at parties, social events, mainly from the 90s and early 2000s. Epstein reportedly visited Mar-a-Lago multiple times. And it's also relevant that Virginia Giuffre, who became a very prominent accuser of Epstein and Prince Andrew, she alleged she was first recruited by Maxwell while working at Mar-a-Lago as a teenager.
So they were friendly, associated for years, but then there was supposedly a falling out.
Right. The story goes that they had some kind of falling out around 2004, apparently over a real estate deal, though the exact details aren't super clear. Later, Trump claimed he actually banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago.
Why? What was the reason given?
The reason that surfaced after Epstein's 2019 arrest was that Trump supposedly banned him for hitting on the underage daughter of a member. But again, that specific reason is hard to verify independently, and the timing of when that claim emerged makes it, potentially seem like a PR move after the fact.
Okay, fast forward to 2016. Trump's running for president, campaigning on Drain the Swamp. How did this Epstein connection play out then?
It definitely came up. It was awkward for his drain the swamp message, obviously, but it was also complicated because his opponent, Hillary Clinton, had her own Epstein connection through Bill Clinton.
Right, Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's jet a lot.
Numerous times, yeah. So it became a political football for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Each campaign tried to use the other's association with Epstein against them.
Then, 2019, during Trump's first term, Epstein gets arrested again. How did President Trump handle that? What was the impact?
That arrest absolutely reignited interest in all of Epstein's high-profile connections, Trump included. Trump's public response was basically to distance himself. He said he was not a fan, hadn't spoken to Epstein in maybe 15 years.
Did he comment on the Justice Department's actions?
Yeah, he praised the DOJ for pursuing the case, and he even tried to take credit for pushing out Alex Acosta, his labor secretary, because of Acosta's role in that lenient 2008 plea deal for Epstein.
Did it hurt Trump politically at the time?
Honestly, the direct political damage seemed pretty minimal back then. His supporters mostly shrugged it off as, that was a long time ago, or Bill Clinton's connection was worse. Right-wing media also tended to focus much more heavily on the Clinton connection than Trump's.
So putting it all together, were there deeper links beyond the social stuff? What's fact versus what's still just a question mark?
Okay, fact. Trump and Epstein knew each other socially, were friendly in the 90s and early 2000s. That's undeniable. Question. Given Trump's own comments, could he have known, or at least strongly suspected, what Epstein was up to? We don't know.
Fact. Trump reportedly banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago at some point.
Right. Question. Was that a genuine moral stand, or was it purely a business PR decision later on? The timing is ambiguous.
Fact. There are photos of Trump with Epstein and women.
Yes. Question. Were those women just social acquaintances at parties, or could any of them have been victims? We have no evidence of the latter regarding Trump's presence.
Fact. Virginia Giuffre worked at Mar-a-Lago when she says she was recruited.
The fact. Question. Was that purely coincidental, or did the environment at Mar-a-Lago somehow play a role, even inadvertently, in making recruitment easier? Again, no proof of direct involvement by Trump or the club itself in recruitment.
So bottom line, legally.
Bottom line, as of now, no criminal charges have ever been brought against Trump related to Jeffrey Epstein, and no definitive proof of involvement in Epstein's crimes has emerged.
Okay, let's jump ahead now to the present, or near present, in our scenario.
Yeah.
July 2025. How is the Epstein shadow playing out during Trump's second term? What's the latest?
Well, the big thing recently in this July 2025 context has been the fallout from the so-called Epstein files controversy. Essentially, the DOJ and FBI put out a memo.
What did he say?
It basically said they didn't find any hidden Epstein client list, like the kind people were imagining, and that there's no ongoing criminal investigation related to such a list.
How did Trump react to that?
His reaction has been pretty forceful. He's publicly called the whole Epstein controversy a Democrat hoax. He defeated his Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And he actually lashed out at some of his own supporters who were pushing for more transparency, calling them weaklings and stupid.
Wow, calling his own supporters stupid. That seems risky. Did it cause backlash?
Yeah, it reportedly caused a significant internal backlash. Some of his core MAGA base, the ones who really bought into the idea that he'd expose elite corruption via Epstein, felt kind of betrayed.
And what about in Congress?
You saw signs of division there, too. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, in this scenario, apparently adjourned early to dodge a potentially messy vote about releasing more Epstein documents. You've got some Republicans pushing for transparency, others just echoing Trump's dismissal. It's definitely stirring things up.
So this is casting a shadow politically.
Absolutely. It's eroding trust in institutions even further, for one, and it's fueling more conspiracy theories because the official answer feels unsatisfying to many. Plus, critics are pointing to Trump's installation of loyalists at DOJ and FBI, suggesting it looks like outcomes are being managed politically, especially when they don't match his campaign promises.
Has it affected his actual agenda, his second-term goals?
It seems to be causing distractions, yeah. Pulling focus from things like tax cuts or other policy priorities. It might be weakening his base cohesion a bit. Some early vocal supporters seem to be peeling off or at least getting critical. And it arguably hurts his credibility. Yeah. He promised this big reveal, this drain the swamp moment on Epstein, and it hasn't materialized in the way people expected.
So it sounds like a classic case of overpromising and underdelivering, especially for that segment of his base.
Exactly. He campaigned, in part, on releasing this list, exposing the network. But what came out was heavily redacted. No huge bombshells involving new, currently powerful people. So you've got this sense of disillusionment. You see prominent pro-Trump figures, maybe like a Laura Loomer or Jack Posobiec, even Andrew Schultz mentioned here, publicly criticizing how it's been handled, demanding more, some even floating the idea of a cover-up by his own administration.
It's fascinating how this one issue splits opinions across the entire political spectrum. How are the different groups framing this whole Epstein saga, especially in relation to Trump?
It really is a prism. If you look at the far right, the populist and McGee base, like we said, they expected Trump to be the wrecking ball, to expose everyone. Now, for some, there's this feeling of betrayal, like maybe he's sold out or the deep state, it's just being managed, not dismantled.
Okay, what about mainstream Democrats?
They tend to view Trump's promises about the list as pure political theater. They're skeptical of his motives entirely. Their narrative focuses on hypocrisy, Trump associating with Epstein, then promising transparency but delivering redactions via a DOJ led by his appointee, Pam Bondi. They might frame it as another example of him using government institutions for personal or political protection.
And progressives, the left, do they see it differently?
Often, yeah. They tend to offer a broader systemic critique. They see Epstein as a symptom of elite impunity that crosses party lines. It's not just about Trump or just about Clinton. There's often disappointment with both parties, arguing that nobody truly in power wants real accountability for the wealthy elite. Epstein becomes a symbol of class protection.
How about the middle ground? Centrists, maybe more traditional conservatives?
They often try to downplay it, maybe dismiss it as overly conspiratorial or a distraction from policy debates. They might defend the redactions as legally necessary. The narrative is often, look, Maxwell was convicted, the justice system handled it, let's move on.
And finally, libertarians or maybe anti-establishment types.
Their focus is almost always on transparency and government overreach or failure. They'd likely support releasing all the documents, investigating the government's handling of the case from the start. The narrative is less about party and more about how power corrupts and how secrecy enables abuse, and that applies to any administration.
Okay, so given all these different takes, let's try to land on what we might call a healthy, nuanced view. It's so easy to get swept up in the partisan noise on this. What's the core truth we need to hang on to?
The absolute foundational truth is Epstein was deeply connected to elites across the board. Donald Trump, yes. Bill Clinton, yes. Prince Andrew, yes. Figures in finance, science, media. It's documented. Photos, flight logs, testimonies confirm it.
But the nuances.
The nuance is that Epstein was a master networker, a social operator. Being connected to him doesn't automatically mean someone was complicit in his crimes. However, it does raise questions about judgment, about willful blindness, about what people knew or suspected and chose to ignore. Proximity to that kind of darkness isn't neutral.
And specifically regarding Trump's connection, the nuanced take.
Trump absolutely had a social relationship with Epstein, particularly in the 90s and early 2000s. His own words from 2002 suggest he was aware of Epstein's reputation, at least regarding younger women. They were photographed together. Epstein visited his club.
Right.
But again, social knowledge isn't legal proof of participation in crime. Scrutiny is absolutely warranted about what Trump knew, when he really distanced himself, and why was it ethics or politics. But we don't have evidence of criminal involvement.
And that 2008 plea deal, its significance needs a nuanced view, too.
Definitely. That deal was a profound miscarriage of justice. Brokered by Alex Acosta, who Trump later appointed labor secretary, it showed how wealth and power could bend the system. But the nuance is critical. This wasn't just about one party or one administration. It highlighted a systemic vulnerability, how elite protection and secrecy could shield someone like Epstein for years.
And Trump's handling of it in his second term. The files, the backlash.
His handling has clearly been politically problematic, even for him. Promising a big reveal and then having his DOJ release heavily redacted files or declare no ongoing investigation. It understandably looks like damage control or a broken promise to parts of his base. The nuance isn't necessarily about proving guilt, but about raising serious questions regarding transparency and whether the public is getting the full story from its government, regardless of who is in charge.
So navigating this, what are the big pitfalls to avoid?
Number 1, don't get lost in outlandish conspiracy theories that lack solid evidence. They often distract from the very real, documented injustices and failures. Things like Epstein being a Mossad agent may be interesting, but it pulls focus from the victims and the system that failed them.
And the other big one.
Partisan blindness. It's so tempting to only focus on the connections that indict the other side. If you're anti-Trump, only talking about his ties while ignoring Clinton's. If you're pro-Trump, doing the reverse. We have to try and apply the same standard of scrutiny to everyone involved based on evidence, not just political convenience.
This really does open up broader themes, doesn't it? Beyond just Epstein. Themes we see recurring in modern politics, especially around someone like Trump. What are those patterns?
You definitely see recurring patterns. One is just Trump's general proximity to controversial figures, not just Epstein, but think Michael Cohen, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, people who later faced legal trouble. It raises questions about judgment or the circles he moves in, even if he himself isn't charged in relation to their specific crimes.
Another pattern seems to be loyalty, almost weaponized loyalty.
Yes, exactly. He surrounds himself with loyalists, and sometimes those loyalists are later accused of enabling questionable actions or stifling dissent. You see it potentially in DOJ appointments or his history of firing inspectors general or officials seen as insufficiently loyal.
And his communication strategy when scandals hit.
There's a playbook, right?
Yeah.
Distract and reframe. Deflect criticism by attacking the source, the media, the deep state, political opponents. We saw it with the Russia probe, impeachment, and now with aspects of the Epstein fallout.
And that tension between promising transparency but practicing secrecy.
Absolutely. Promises to release everything, drain the swamp, but then you get sealed documents, redacted reports, fights over tax returns. It creates a dissonance.
Yeah.
And finally, the polarizing effect. Every controversy becomes this litmus test, forcing people to choose sides, digging partisans in deeper, and often leaving nuanced discussion behind.
It's interesting to see echoes in his other legal battles. Where do you see parallels?
Well, look at cases where he was found liable or guilty. The E. Jean Carroll case, liable for sexual abuse and defamation. Themes of alleged abuse, denial, attacking the accuser. The Trump Organization fraud case, found liable, fined heavily. Themes of leveraging wealth, complex finances, obscuring records, denying wrongdoing. The New York hush money case, convicted on felony counts. Themes of secret payments, silencing potential scandal, using legal means for arguably unethical ends.
And what about cases where he wasn't convicted or avoided direct liability, but maybe similar dynamics were at play?
The Miller investigation is a key example. No criminal conspiracy found linking Trump campaign to Russia, but volumes of documented contacts, obstructive behavior, questionable judgment. His first impeachment, impeached by the House for abuse of power regarding Ukraine, but acquitted by the Senate, largely along party lines, protected by political allies. And even here, with the Epstein-Maxwell situation, no charges against Trump, despite the known social ties and public suspicion due to a lack of direct legal evidence connecting him to the crimes.
So what's the overall pattern you see in how he navigates these high-stakes legal and political forts?
It seems to be a pattern of operating right up to the legal line, sometimes arguably crossing ethical lines, but maintaining enough distance or ambiguity to avoid direct criminal conviction in many cases. He delegates, he uses lawyers aggressively, he benefits from complexity and confusion, and he relies heavily on political loyalty to shield him. He's very skilled at surviving situations that might end other political careers.
Taking all this together, Epstein, Trump, the patterns, what does it tell us about our current political climate?
It tells us, I think, some pretty sobering things. One, scandals don't have the same impact they used to. Partisanship acts like a shield. People are willing to overlook or rationalize almost anything from their own side, creating a kind of scandal fatigue.
And truth becomes secondary.
It often feels that way. Narrative control, managing perception, spinning the story that often seems more important than the underlying facts. And third, there's just this profound distrust in institutions. The courts, the media, government agencies, large numbers of people see them as biased or compromised, which makes finding common ground or objective truth incredibly difficult.
So for us, for the listeners trying to make sense of all this, how do we navigate it, regardless of where we stand politically?
It's tough. If you lean left or progressive, maybe the key is consistency. Don't give a pass to problematic behavior just because it's someone on your side. Focus on the systemic issues of power, not just the personalities. And maybe resist the urge to just dunk on the other side, because that often just hardens divisions.
And if you lean right or conservative?
Maybe it's about holding leaders to standards, even if you feel the other side gets away with things. Question the narratives you're given, even from sources you trust. Ask that classic question. If a Democrat or someone I opposed did this exact same thing, how would I react?
And for everyone.
The goal has to be nuance. Acknowledge complexity. Someone can be associated with bad people without being guilty of their crimes, but that association still warrants scrutiny. Seek out multiple sources, primary documents if you can find them, and resist, really resist, making every single issue a test of tribal loyalty.
Because at its heart, the Epstein case isn't just about Epstein or even just about Trump. It's about the system that allowed it.
Exactly. The core ethical point is that the system failed. And anyone who is close to that system, close to Epstein, deserves scrutiny not automatically assuming guilt, but because power demands accountability, especially when the cost was decades of silence for victims.
And it challenges our simple ideas of guilt and innocence, doesn't it? Especially when power is involved.
It really does. We want a clear verdict.
Yeah.
Guilty or not guilty. But powerful people often operate in this gray area. Maybe they were criminally involved, but did they benefit from a system that protected abusers? Did they choose willful ignorance? Did their proximity lend legitimacy? That's a form of complicity, maybe not legal, but moral. Being close to a predator like Epstein reflects something: poor judgment, moral flexibility, prioritizing access over ethics. And that matters, even if it's not a crime.
The silence around it all is also revealing.
The
Vagueness.
Absolutely. Notice how many powerful people said very little or spoke in careful ambiguities, Trump included. That silence, that vagueness, it's often strategic. It avoids taking a stand, avoids accountability. It allows supporters to project innocence and critics to project guilt. It's a tool elites use.
It feels like we end up projecting onto these figures what we already believe or want to believe.
I think that's exactly right. Trump, like other polarizing figures, becomes a kind of Rorschach test. You see in him what you're predisposed to see: the hero, the villain, the victim of a witch hunt, the con man. But what if the reality is messier? What if he's just a powerful man navigating, sometimes exploiting, sometimes maybe even resisting a deeply compromised system? Framing it that way forces us to look beyond just him.
So the final thought then. Maybe the Epstein case is like a crack in the mirror, showing us the flaws in elite society itself.
That's a good way to put it. Trump's role, whatever it was, big or small, isn't the only thing that matters. The deeper, more uncomfortable question is, why do we keep building and tolerating systems where someone like Epstein can flourish for decades? Protected, enabled, surrounded by powerful people claiming they didn't know. If we only hunt for individual villains, we miss seeing the architecture, the structures of silence, power, and mutual benefit that allows injustice like this to persist.